I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Thursday, week 11 of the NFL season. Hard to believe, but we are here. We're going to be previewing all the action. But first, Dennis, I don't know if you saw the news today, but the NFL asked the NFLPA to stop giving team report cards. I don't know about you, but it made me feel like the consummate C student asking the school to prevent his parents from saying that he's not doing that well.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are times when I'll look at the boys and I'll be like, look, you guys can't tell your mom I did this. So that's pretty much what it was. I don't know, C's get degrees, I guess. Isn't that what the old saying is?
George
Bush, C student.
Ironically enough, it sounds like it was a little bit of the Jets owner, balking a little bit at, I guess they got a D. I don't even totally pay attention to those. They got a D, and Robert Kraft and the Panthers owner got a D. And I'm like, guys, maybe instead of complaining that they're grading you, take a look in the mirror and try to make things better. Patriots seem like they've cleaned their organization up a little bit. Jets, Panthers, maybe not so much. That leads us into tonight's game, because two of those teams, the 2-7 Jets and the 8-2 Patriots, are playing on Thursday Night Football. If you're not hyped up, well, that means you've seen the Jets this season, as both Dennis and I have. Dennis, Garrett Wilson went on IR. Breece Hall is good, but the Patriots, the one thing you would say about their defense is they don't let any running backs have any joy. So is there any Jet you feel good about playing tonight?
No, there isn't. I mean, you start Breece Hall because he's going to get the volume. It kind of is what it is. You're hoping for, 17 carries for 59 yards and he falls into the end zone. Maybe he breaks a screen pass like he did late last week. They don't give up a lot of yards rushing to the quarterback either, so it doesn't seem like Fields will be able to use his legs. And the Tanner Engstrom offense and Justin Fields have clearly not been a match. Somebody pushed the wrong button there.
Yep. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, it was a good week last week for Travion Henderson. Ramondre Stevenson has been ruled out. They said this week they want to feature Travion Henderson. Are you buying the hype?
Well, I mean, it's a great week to feature him. The Jets just traded away their best defensive lineman last week. He was RB4 last week after being RB38 weeks 1 through 9. Ramondre's out. Jennings has a Q tag because of his knee. You got Dearness Johnson and some guy with the last name Baker that I don't remember. So depending on what goes on with Jennings' knee, Dearness Johnson could be the RB2 in New England this week. I'm a little disappointed that, Henderson only had one target last week. Maybe he gets a few more targets this week, but he's in line to get a pretty good volume just based on the fact they should be ahead and not have to throw the ball a ton. So they're probably going to want to shorten the clock and grind it out as well. Just get out of there, keep people healthy. So I don't know. Maybe D'Ernest Johnson might be a sneaky play this week.
I am taking the Patriots.
Me too.
Last international series game live from Madrid, the 3-7 Washington Commanders at the 3-7 Miami Dolphins. Nothing like sending Spain our best. It has not been a great season for the Commanders offense. Last year, one of the bright spots was tight end Zach Ertz. He's had some good games earlier in the season, but kind of faded with the rest of it this season. How are you feeling about him as a streaming tight end option?
No, it's football Americano is no bueno, eh?
Yeah, they may not be pleased with us.
Yeah, no, Ertz is chugging along at tight end 10, even with the goose egg in week 5, though he has had three down weeks in a row. Mariota threw the ball just 22 times last week in a 22-point loss. So I'm a little concerned that maybe they don't trust Mariota to throw the ball. Because if you're behind, you wanna catch up, and throwing the ball is the route. I think Ertz is a low end tight end 1. You want to, you want the guys that score the most points. He could be tight end 10. He could be tight end 16. But he's going to get volume. McLaurin is out. The running game is suspect. It's basically him and Debo.
Yeah, and even Debo's been hit or miss. For the Dolphins, they've done a little bit better the last couple of weeks, but that's mostly been because of Devon Achane. Tua Tagovailoa still struggling. He's QB 18 on the season, but that's mostly because he's played every game. Only 13.7 points per game, which is not exactly lighting the world on fire. Right in the territory between Michael Penix Jr. and Geno Smith. So how are you feeling about Tua?
I want to be optimistic. They've got a narrow funnel there now with Hill out, but they have a below average pass block win rate, 54%. The league average is around 60. The Commanders do give up the second most passing yards per game in the NFL. So they've got that going for them. But they also give up the fourth most rushing yards, which means it could be another great big Devon Achane game. I feel like Tua's ceiling is QB 12 this week, but you're probably better off if he's your QB 2. Waddle should have a good game because he's the show. We'll see if Greg Dulcich can repeat his masterful performance coming off the street last week. They had Casey Washington, and I forget who Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. So I don't know that I want to slide any of those guys into my lineup, even as my last flex. So it's Waddle, it's Achane, and Tua as a QB2.
I am, however, taking the Dolphins this week.
So am I.
5-5 Carolina Panthers at the reeling 3-6 Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, we talked about Bryce Young's struggles, but what about Tet McMillan? He is wide receiver 22 on the season, thanks again in part to the fact they haven't had a bye, but he's only wide receiver 34 on a points per game basis. How are you feeling about him as a weekly start?
So I'm still good to start him. He's getting over 8 targets per game over the last 5 weeks and averaging, I think, 7.7 targets a game over the course of the season. But he needs to start finding the end zone. He's only scored in 1 game. He had 2 touchdowns, I think, in week 5. The Falcons give up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. So it could be a game where Rico Dowdle gets heavy usage. But McMillan is the number 1 there. And, with Bryce Young having his struggles, they're still throwing it McMillan's way. He's got that big catch radius, but he needs to score. We need McMillan to get in the end zone so we feel better about what he's doing. He doesn't need to get in every week, but man, if he could get in like every 2 or 3 weeks, score a touchdown to go, and every couple of weeks maybe get up there over 100 yards, be a little more productive on those eight targets a game, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that would require Bryce Young throwing one in the end zone. So good luck with that. On the other side, this feels kind of like a must-win game for Atlanta. They were once 3-2, now 3-6, really fading quickly with a lot of tough losses. Michael Penix Jr. has been hit or miss. He's been better at home, but only quarterback 25 on the season, quarterback 28 on a points per game basis. How are you feeling about him this week?
So the Panthers are a bottom 10 team in pass yards to wide receivers. So Penix and Drake London should be able to complete that, continue that relationship they got going on, because they have really been clicking. It'd be great to see Darnell Mooney kind of get something going, but it came out this week, I think, that he broke his collarbone in preseason is what his injury was, and maybe struggling coming back from that. I don't know. But London and Penix are clicking pretty well. But for a guy with as reputed a strong arm as Penix supposedly has, I repeat, as I did, I think, last show, dude sure bounces a lot of balls in front of his receivers. But he's got an opportunity to do something against a Carolina defense that isn't great, Bob.
Yeah, and I am taking the Falcons this week at home with their backs against the wall.
I'm going to take the Panthers. I feel like this is a game where they can ride Rico Dowdle.
One of the better games of the early window, the 6-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the 6-3 Buffalo Bills. Dennis, for Tampa Bay, Kate Otten got off to a bit of a slow start, but with all the injuries that have started to pile up since week 5, he is up to tight end 11. They seem to be finding him a little more often. How are you feeling about him this week?
Well, that offense kind of rolls through Emeka Ibuka. Tez Johnson's the assistant there. Then Otten. I think Bucky Irving is still out this week, right?
Yes.
So it'll be Rachaad White and Sean Tucker again. So Otten should be able to get some value. The downside is the Bills are very stingy versus the tight ends. They're giving up the fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends. I'd honestly be trying to look at other options than Otten, because he could have an okay game. He could have one of those 4 for 50 kind of games. He could have a game where he gets in the touchdown. But based on how Buffalo has played the tight end so far this year, it's a dart throw to get a game like that against Buffalo.
Meanwhile, for the Bills, it was not a great week for James Cook last week in the loss. Now he faces a pretty robust rush defense in Tampa Bay. So how are you feeling about him this week?
Well, the Bucs are giving up top 10 fantasy points to running backs. So he's got that going for him. I think that there's an opportunity for Cook. Buffalo's got a lot of weapons that they use very little, but they do use Dalton Kincaid and they do use James Cook. So Josh Allen is going to have to kind of move the ball around some. Cook is viable in the passing game and the running game. So even if they put up a stout run defense, Cook will be able to do a little bit in the passing game as well. Unlike Cade Otten, you're starting James Cook.
Both these teams are kind of desperate for a win, but I'm going with Buffalo at home.
So am I.
The 4-5 Houston Texans at the 1-8 Tennessee Titans, fresh off a bye. Dennis, the past 2 weeks, Dalton Schultz has stepped up huge. Over weeks 9 and 10, he is tight end 4 on the season, really developed a connection with Davis Mills, who is going to be the starter again this week. How do you feel about Dalton Schultz?
Well, he's played 2 of his 3 highest snap percentage games the last 2 weeks. Tennessee gives up bottom 10 targets, receiving receptions, yards, and fantasy points to tight ends. ultimately, because Tennessee is not good, they don't end up having to, you know, throw the ball a lot. They can run the ball against Tennessee. They give up the sixth most rushing yards while being middle of the pack versus the pass. So Woody Marks coming off a game where he outsnapped Nick Chubb 80% to 10%. This could be a Woody Marks game. And as much as, like, I definitely am starting Schultz over Cade Otton. I think he can be top 12. But with the weapons they have on the outside and in the slot with Kirk and Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, they have a lot of receiving weapons. And Marks is still kind of finding his way as being the guy. But it looks like they're willing to make that transition away from Chubb based on last week. Some of last week's additional touches and snaps could have been because they were playing catch up in the fourth quarter and third and fourth quarter.
I don't blame him. I have also transitioned away from Chubb on my fantasy teams. On the flip side, I know they're coming off a bye and Calvin Ridley is tracking toward being back, but is there any Titan you're really trusting against a pretty great Texans defense?
Not really. It's hard to, like, I've got a situation where I have to play Cam Ward or I'm, playing wide receiver 75. So I'm going to take the shot on Ward. Texans defense is going to be chomping at the bit against a bad Tennessee team. They want to get after it and welcome Cam Ward to the NFL and welcome Melike Omenor to the NFL. And it could be a long, long day for Tennessee. It's hard. It's hard to put any of them in your lineup, even if Ridley comes back.
I am taking the Texans.
So am I.
The 6-3 Chicago Bears at the 4-5 Minnesota Vikings. Don't look now, but Caleb Williams up to QB 9 on the season, QB 8 on a points per game basis. How are you feeling about him as a starter going into Minnesota?
I think you're starting him. Even in one QB leagues, he's a start. He's a start, edging maybe because of the defense. He might be edging into a streamer, but yeah, he's playing good. Minnesota has the fourth highest sack rate and the second highest QB pressure rate, so that's going to be something for Williams. He can get rattled a little bit. They had 2 sacks on him in week 1, but he did rush for 58 yards and a touchdown in week 1. So he's familiar with him. He's played him now a couple years in a row. He's gone up against that Brian Flores defense. He knows they're going to come after him. He's got weapons, though. And, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, Loveland, Kmet. I'd like to say they have DJ Moore as a weapon, but they certainly don't seem to think so.
For the Minnesota Vikings, Aaron Jones came back 3 weeks ago. He has steadily improved his production each week. Running back 21 since he returned seems like the better option in that backfield. Do you like him this week against the Bears?
Yeah, he's a RB2 flex guy. He's good in the passing game, and the real worry is what kind of consistency can JJ McCarthy provide? He threw the ball, I think, 42 times last week. That's not what they want to do with him. And we've seen them like shut McCarthy down and have him throw the ball like 18 times. I think they want, if they have their druthers, they'd like between 25 and 30 pass attempts, but that's going to depend on, can Aaron Jones get anything done in the running game? Jordan Mason, I think they were something like a 70-30, 75-25 snap share split last week. So the Vikings are in on Jones as long as he's going to be healthy. It's clearly a starter backup situation. So, yeah, I think you roll Jones out there as your RB2 flex option.
I am taking the Bears.
I think I've talked myself into the Bears too. I've been debating.
We'll call them the upstart Bears. The 5-3-1 Green Bay Packers at the 2-8 New York Giants. Dennis, Jordan Love is quarterback 14 on the season, but he's had 10 or fewer points in each of the last 2 games since losing Tucker Kraft. Should be a better matchup, but how are you feeling about Love?
So he is the middiest of middiest quarterbacks. I mean, QB 14, and that feels like a ceiling. We talked 3 years ago when he was
18 on a points per game basis, if that helps.
He took the starting job, and they jettisoned Aaron Rodgers. And then they drafted a bunch of young receivers, and we were excited to see how will they grow? How will they grow? And I don't know that it's Josh Jacobs who's retarding the growth of the passing game because he's so good at the running game. But they don't have an alpha wide receiver. Like, if anybody needs AJ Brown, it's the Green Bay Packers. And they don't have, I like Romeo Doubs. He's good. He'd be a great wide receiver too. I like Christian Watson. He could be a good wide receiver too with some boom bust upside. Matthew Golden, I don't know where he's at right now. But the game seems to run through Josh Jacobs, and that means Jordan Love is not passing it very much. So he's a QB2.
Yeah, and Golden has been limited with that shoulder injury, missed last week, so who can tell? A knee and hamstring injury for Watson, Dontavian Wicks with a calf injury, Savion Williams with a foot injury. So it's not like he has a plethora of receiving targets either. For the Giants, they have decided to put in Jameis Winston. What are you hoping to see from him?
Well, I didn't realize it was Christmas already. I was giving the girls at work hell about getting out the Christmas decorations, and it wasn't even Thanksgiving. And little did I know we were going to get Jameis Winston. So God bless America. Merry Christmas, everyone. Ho, ho,
ho. That's what Micah Parsons said in team meetings this week, too.
I would not be surprised. But you know what? Jameis Winston will chuck it 45 times, throw 5 interceptions and 5 touchdowns. He gives no flips.
Yeah.
So he's been there. He's been in the Kafka offense. Mike Kafka wants to do well, and they're coming off firing their coach. A very unflattering story about Dable was out in ESPN today. If you saw it, did not paint him in a pretty light. So that. If that story is true, that would explain why they kept Shane and not Daboll. Anyways, I think Jameis is going to be fine. They've got a mediocre running game with Tracy.
Honestly, what makes them think that he wasn't right about Mike Kafka?
Right. This could be a good game for Darius Slayton. Jameis likes to chuck it downfield. That's Darius Slayton. Hell, we may even see Jalen Hyatt sighting. So, Jameis is going to throw the ball. I don't expect the Packers to get way out ahead. The Giants' defense, their pass rush especially, is pretty solid. So it could be a closer game than we expect. But I'm going to, screw it. I'm taking Jameis. I'm going Giants.
I'm taking the Packers.
We'll get that dead cat bounce.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm taking the Packers. The 3-6 Cincinnati Bengals at the 5-4 Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Burrow is back practicing to try to give them hope, but they need to win games along the way. The last time these teams hooked up, Joe Flacco threw for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns nearly, and I think they got the win in that game. So how are we feeling about Flacco going to Pittsburgh?
Reputationally, I was like, oh, this ain't going to be good. But yeah, like you mentioned, he had a pretty decent game against them last time, pulled out the win. Pittsburgh, whatever team that is, actually gives up the most passing yards per game in the league. So while they get a lot of credit for sacking the quarterback, they give up a lot of passing yards. So I'm down for it. I'm like, let's go. Um, they do get the second most sacks in the league behind Denver. I think if Denver didn't get another sack the rest of the year, they'd still lead the league in sacks. They're so far ahead. But he's QB5 since he took over in Cincinnati. He knows the job. Get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And it's been working. He gets rid of it quick. He knows he isn't going to have time because the offensive line is terrible. But because he's able to get rid of it so quick, it's helped Chase Brown in the running game. Noah Fant has come back to life, showing signs of life and catching some passes. So I'm all about it. I think Joe's going to have a good game. He'll get sacked a few times. He might throw a couple of interceptions. But if he went, 275 and 3 touchdowns, I would not be the least bit surprised.
Meanwhile, on the other side, despite being pretty much the only wide receiver they have, DK Metcalf only wide receiver 28 on the season. It has not been a robust passing game, but this could be a good matchup. Do you feel better about him this week?
It should be a great matchup. And, with you're signed up with DK. He's wide receiver 28. You're riding that boom bust train with him. It's kind of been that way a lot of his career. But they're going against a terrible Cincinnati defense with a Cincinnati offense that can score some points. So Pittsburgh is going to have to keep up. Now, we've seen it before, though, that, they run that, one running back, 4 tight end offense, and the wide receivers don't get crap. So, who knows what's going to happen with all those guys. But it should be a game where Metcalf, if he doesn't have a ton of volume, he should be able to put up pretty big yardage and a touchdown, maybe 2, just based on his big playability against a pretty bad defense.
I went back and forth, but I'm going to take the Steelers.
Yeah, I'm taking the Steelers too.
The 7-3 Los Angeles Chargers at the 5-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked about last week for Kamani Vidal. He has alternated great games with poor games. Last week, he had a great game. In his even weeks, he's been pretty good. In his odd weeks, since week 5, he's been down. So do you think this could be a down week?
Like, if you look at the data, yeah, I
know it seemed weird to believe, but it's every week since he came in, he's been like really up and down.
Well, in Jacksonville, for all of the crap they get for not being as good as we want them to be because of the weapons they have, their defense gives up the 4th fewest rushing yards in the NFL. So if I had to bet, I'm going to bet Kamani Vidal doesn't have a great game. He's going to get the volume. He'll be the guy there, but they're going to throw the ball with Herbert and McConkey and Allen et al., et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera. Meanwhile, for the Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr. still ailing. Travis Hunter went on IR. They traded for Jacoby Myers. What are you expecting from him?
So the Chargers have a top 10 defense versus the pass. But it's De'Ami Brown, it's Parker Washington. I think Myers is going to be in his customary wide receiver 2 role. Well, I do think Parker Washington is miscast as the wide receiver 1. He's the guy Trevor's comfortable with, and he's the guy that Liam Cohen is comfortable with. And so, you're probably looking at a 5 or 6 target game, and hopefully he can catch 4 of them, and he can have a decent YPC and maybe get in the end zone. But, if he can get 7 targets, And some of it too is going to depend on how explosive the Chargers are with their offense. If they're putting up points, then Jacksonville's got to try to score as opposed to run the ball with ETN and Allen and Bashal Tootin. So if they're having to play catch up or if they're having to play keep up, it could be a much better game for Jacoby. So he's probably flex worthy, but he's got his upside is game script limited.
I am taking the Chargers.
So am I.
Huge matchup in the NFC West, the 7-2 Seattle Seahawks at the 7-2 Los Angeles Rams. Dennis, an incredible season for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Through 10 weeks, he is wide receiver 1 on the season. But the rest of the Seahawks have been beyond hit or miss. They don't have a running back in the top 24. Sam Darnold is QB 16, which isn't terrible, but also not incredible. They don't have any other receivers in the top 24, any tight ends up in the top area. So is there any Seahawk beside JSN that you feel good about starting?
Man, what happened to Kenneth Walker? It was supposed to be his year.
If we go back to the offseason, I did not think he would be great.
Yeah. AJ Barner's banged up, so that leaves Arroyo. Then there's Cooper Kupp, and who'd they just bring in?
Rashid Shaheed. They have Torrey
Shaheed.
Horton. I just feel like they're all dart throws.
Yeah, until we see how Shaheed settles in, can he take over that wide receiver 2 role consistently? We're probably a couple, like, even if he does it this week, if he goes out and has 7 targets to JSN's 12 targets and the next highest guy has 3, we'll be like, yeah, okay, if this is what it's going to look like, that's great. But we'll have to see it next week and maybe even the week after before we're like, okay, this is what it is. It's like pick your poison starting a second player from Seattle right now. Darnold's probably safe enough as a QB too.
Yeah. For the Rams, Matthew Stafford's been red hot, quarterback 7 on the season. Seattle has a pretty good defense, so do you think that they can slow him down at all?
No. I mean, do I think he's going to have a, Lamar Jackson high efficiency kind of game where he's, 25 for 29 for 325 yards? Probably not. But he could go, 28 for 40 for 295 and 3 with 2 interceptions and be like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. Matthew Stafford will take some risks. He's got a big arm. He's comfortable using it. With Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Kyron Williams, they have a great core for their offensive production and a narrow funnel. It's a good. This is what we want for fantasy with all of our teams, but you don't get that. So no. Will he have? Where is he? QB 7 on the year. Will he be a top 7 QB this week? I'd say the odds are better than 50%, but they're also probably being a QB1, he's probably 90% or better. So roll that sucker out there.
I'm going to take the Rams at home.
So am I.
The 6-4 San Francisco 49ers at the 3-6 Arizona Cardinals. Dennis, it looks like Brock Purdy is tracking to start. There's been some rumblings this week that there's a brewing quarterback controversy with him and Mac Jones. How do you feel that shakes out?
Well, I think if Purdy's healthy, I feel like we've expected him to start once he gets healthy. But because Mac was playing pretty well, they were okay waiting till he was fully 100% healthy and good to go. So I don't know that there's the only way there will be a controversy in my eyes is that if Purdy comes back and he starts crapping the bed, and what in his past leads us to believe that that's going to happen. He's got Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Juwan Jennings. He's got a good team around him. He's going to come in. He's going to execute the offense just like he always does, and he'll be fine. I think that the tough part for me, if I'm Mac Jones, is like, why did I sign a 2-year deal? Like,
I mean, I think it's a good opportunity if he keeps playing this way. Either something will happen with him. But for Arizona, we were just starting to get excited about Marvin Harrison Jr., and he goes and has appendicitis, has emergency surgery. So we know Trey McBride's going to be good to go, but the rest of Arizona is completely uninspiring to me. Is there anyone outside of McBride that you're interested in playing this week?
So unfortunately, the guy that's probably going to get the run is going to be Greg Dortch. But they lost Zay Jones. He tore his Achilles, arguing a call with a referee.
That's how he tore his Achilles?
Yeah. So,
that's the Arizona season in a nutshell.
They don't have much on their practice squad. Jalen Brooks is probably the only guy I recognize. So you're looking at Xavier Weaver and Andre Baccellia. If anybody's going to step up, I would expect it's probably going to be Elijah Higgins, the tight end. He was a wide receiver in college. So now you'll have Dortch and Wilson. Yeah, I like Michael Wilson. I'm okay flexing Michael Wilson this week, but I'll probably end up being angry that I didn't flex Greg Dortch because for whatever reason, that elf gets work when he shouldn't. The running backs are kind of a hot mess right now. None of them are I'm looking to start. But, I mean, can they really give Trey McBride 35 targets?
I mean, can they really afford not to give Trey McBride 35?
Right.
No.
I mean, they start that way. Somebody else has got to be open if they're going to target McBride that heavily, right?
You would think. Well, I'm taking the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm taking the 49ers too.
The 4-5 Baltimore Ravens at the 2-7 Cleveland Browns. Dennis, wide receiver Zay Flowers, arguably the most consistent for the Ravens. Wide receiver 24 on the year, kind of steady, unspectacular. Is he just a good, solid week-to-week lineup option?
Yeah, I think you can pretty much start him as a wide receiver 2-3. It's, unfortunately, the Ravens, and I don't know if we'll see it with Flowers like we did with Hollywood Brown, where he's like, "Look, man, I just want to," we're seeing it with AJ Brown right now. They're like, I get what you're doing. It's great that we're winning, but I just want to feel like I'm involved and I'm a part of it. So, can you just let me go somewhere they throw the ball? And, that was, Hollywood Brown wasn't mad at the Ravens. He was just like, I just want to go somewhere where I'm like part of the game plan. And with Lamar in this running game, it's passing is an afterthought. And it still is. They'll have games where they pop off, but, it's been centered around Lamar and the tight ends, and then they brought in Derrick Henry. So, Zay's wide receiver 24, that's good. I think he's pretty consistent as a, wide receiver 2, with a little bit of wide receiver 3 stuff going on. Rashad Bateman will flash now and again. He tends to get some end zone stuff, and but you can't count on it. Same thing with the tight ends. They're not getting enough volume to put up enough yards. if you're playing one of those tight ends in Baltimore, you're just you're placing a bet on getting a touchdown.
Meanwhile, for the Browns, we talked about it last week. Jerry Jeudy had a pretty phenomenal week in Week 10. Can he do it again against a Ravens defense that's getting better, but hasn't been spectacular?
I mean, sure. It's the Browns have a little bit of gumption here and there. They're just so inconsistent. The quarterback play has not kind of come to the fore yet. I don't know that. I don't know if their next quarterback is actually on the roster right now. If I had to guess, I would say no. I like Dylan Gabriel fine. I think Shador. He hasn't played enough NFL for me to be able to tell whether or not I think he's somebody that can be, is he going to be Tyler Huntley or is he going to be, something more? I just don't know at this point. But the Browns are pretty sure that they know they don't want to play him. So Jerry Jeudy is, he hasn't been efficient this year. He's gotten pretty decent volume, but he hasn't been efficient at all. Last week was his first double-digit week since week 1. And, you need to get more out of your wide receiver 1 than that.
I'm taking the Ravens.
I'm taking the Browns at home.
That would be pretty devastating for Baltimore's. We want to make it back to the playoff hopes.
I don't feel good about that pick.
I mean, there's a couple. They're YOLO picks. A big one in the AFC West, the 5-4 Kansas City Chiefs at the 8-2 Denver Broncos. Patrick Mahomes having a pretty incredible season, comes in as quarterback 2. Broncos defense having a pretty incredible season, has been crushing quarterbacks. Some issues on the line for the Chiefs as well. How are you feeling about Mahomes this week?
I think he's going to do Patrick Mahomes stuff, but he's also going to be under pretty constant pressure. They don't have a running game, so they don't really have the ability to keep you off balance. They've got a strong passing game with Kelsey and Rice, Worthy, so they can make some plays on offense, but Mahomes is going to have to use his legs to get out of the pocket, to get away from the rush, to buy himself time. And, like I mentioned earlier, the Broncos, they lead the league in sacks by a lot. They're running away. Their defense is just playing very, very well. So some of it is like, well, it's Patrick Mahomes and he's going to do Patrick Mahomes stuff. But some of it is also, it's going to be a close game because Bo Nix, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to take the next step this year. So it isn't like I don't sit here and feel like Mahomes has to score 40 points to win this game. Now, that being said, I probably jinxed myself into the Broncos scoring 40 points, which would be great for you. But no, Mahomes, he's good at reading the defense. It's going to be a really good matchup with him against the Broncos defense, and who can figure out who more often.
Meanwhile, for Denver, that offense has been rough at times. Do you think they can get the offense going here at home against the Chiefs?
Well, the Chiefs defense is giving up the 4th fewest points in the league. So it could be a challenge. The one thing, so they've given up the 4th most rushing yards and most rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So this may be a game where Bo Nix gets to use his legs, make some plays with his legs. And if he does that, that could get the defense off balance a little bit, open up some opportunities for him to take some shots in the passing game with Franklin and Sutton and maybe even Marvin Mims if he gets back.
Yeah, Mims is back to a full practice participant, so he should be playing.
Do we
I
know
do
if
think
Dobbins is officially out?
he hasn't been practicing. I would not expect to see him. I think it's going to be RJ Harvey. Um, Denver has somewhat played to the level of their opponents, I feel like, this season. I'm going to take the Broncos at home.
Yeah, I'm taking the Broncos as well.
Detroit Lions 6-3 at the 7-2 Philadelphia Eagles. Last week, Dan Campbell took over play calls, and the Lions put up 44 points on offense. A little bit of a tougher matchup in Philadelphia, but how do you feel about the offense this week?
You know, I think Campbell has been involved in the offensive game plan all season long. And it wasn't like he went out of his way. He didn't humiliate Johnny Morton when he took back the play calling.
Didn't even
it's
tell
just
people
like,
before the game. So.
right. He's just like, I think basically he was like, look, I know you're giving it your all, and this is the first time you've been calling plays at the NFL level. Hey, some things have been inconsistent. Let's work together. I'm gonna call. He may keep it the rest of the season. He may keep it a couple games and then slide it back over to Morton without telling anybody. But we view Campbell as a player's coach. Players love to play for him. They feel like he's authentic. You know where you stand. And if we think the players are treated like that, why wouldn't we think the coaches are? So I'm sure him and Johnny Morton have been talking for, it wasn't something Dan Campbell decided Sunday morning. It was something they were talking. They've probably been talking a couple of weeks. And then he was like, look, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Let's keep working together. We're going to get you there. You're going to be just fine. I believe in you, but I'm going to take over here for a little bit. That being said, you got Jahmyr Gibbs, you got David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, a lot of weapons there to work with. Philadelphia's got a pretty good defense. Philadelphia's offense, I'm going to transition into your next question about how do we feel about Jalen Hurts. He's QB8 on the season. But this feels like a game when Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw the ball. I don't know that Detroit's going to put up 44 points on Philadelphia, but it feels like they can get out to a lead and make Philadelphia have to play keep up. Yeah, I just coined that phrase tonight, by the way, instead of catch up, keep up. Trademark.
Well, and Hurts, maybe inspired to go out there because AJ Brown popping his mouth off, throwing some shade. The last time he did that, they threw it a little bit more. But despite that, I'm taking the Lions.
Oh, so am I. One pride, baby.
Monday Night Football. Get hyped for the 3-5-1 Dallas Cowboys at the 2-7 Las Vegas Raiders. Dennis, the Dallas offense has been a little ho-hum the last few weeks. Do you think they can get it going here against the Raiders?
Well, that will be great because they're going up against a pretty ho-hum defense. The Raiders aren't the worst in the league. They're middle of the pack versus the pass and versus the run. But the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and Jake Ferguson and, dare I say, Javonte Williams. He's having a monster year down there. So the Cowboys have weapons, and they'll be able to put up some points. I like the Cowboys offense, and maybe it's just my unabashed love for CeeDee Lamb. That could very well be it. But George Pickens has been an exemplary team member since he got to Dallas. He's accepted his role as number 2. He knows who he works for, and he's going out there and doing exactly what he needs to do, and likely playing himself into a last-minute gargantuan offer from Jerry Jones.
Meanwhile, for their opponents. Brock Bowers, incredible his first game back, basically non-existent in that putrid Thursday night game against Denver. Dallas doesn't have much of a defense. Do we like him to explode again here?
Yeah, I think you do. Dallas is getting back to Marvin Overshown, their athletic linebacker, who's pretty good in coverage. But Brock Bowers, like any player in the league, you're going to have some ups and downs. He's going to have more ups than downs, but he's going up against a team that doesn't have a great defense. And while the defense has been improving, and adding Kenny Clark and adding Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson, the potential is there for Dallas's defense to bow up a little bit here down the stretch. They're going to need it with a 3-5-1 record, but I still think they're on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. But I don't know how you can not start Bowers if you have him. I mean, to me that would be ludicrous.
I am going to take the Cowboys.
Yeah, me too.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. That puts the schedule in the books for week 11. We'll be back on Tuesday looking at how these games shake out. You still have probably about 20-25 minutes to find something better to do than watching the Jets get annihilated in New England. Otherwise, hope you enjoy that. Dennis, if the people have some free time on their hands or they're just Jets fans who are a little bit downtrodden, what can they do?
You can head on over to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search button, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like.
We would appreciate it. That'll do it for us today. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you on Tuesday.